smaller. There they are. See, there's a picture of a man that's born, was a baby. He's stepping off into the world. There's an angel behind him. He doesn't know what's going on with his life because he's a baby. He's looking forward to life. Here he becomes a young man and he sees life ahead of him. He sees the wonderful celestial city up ahead. And here, as he grows an older man, he starts encountering life itself, the pain of life, the storms of life, the difficulties of life. And that difficulty symbolizes disease, destruction, pain, and things of that nature. This is what this young man is going through here. And the pain itself sometimes is so overwhelming for him that he doesn't see the transcendent and the truth behind him. See the picture there of the angel in the clouds? She's there, or he's there, or the divine is there watching over him. The divine is with him. Or the sense of the true, the good, and the beautiful is there, but he can't see it. And this is normal in psychological circles. When you are in the center of pain and you are in the center of turmoil, or your business crashes, or your mate leaves you, or your child dies, it's hard to see the truth and the good in life. Of course it is. And this is what this man's going through. And if you live long enough, you will also experience pain and suffering and turmoil and storms, or someone you love will. And this is what Thomas Cole's telling us in this painting. And here, toward the end of his life, he's an older man now. This older man is the symbol of the older, as he gets older, his life is broken down. Life is no longer, he can no longer see the beautiful pictures in the trees and the gardens because his eyes are faded. But right in front of him, as he looks up, the divine is close by him. The transcendent is there, calling him to something better, something magical, something wonderful. As he's older and as he begins to reflect upon himself, he's able to see that. Sometimes, though, I found that people can get so bitter, so angry at life, that they're still not even able to see the next step of life, which is the divine, or the heavenistic symbol, or the paradistic state. Joseph Campbell, here in this picture, there's a book I've been reading. I thought it was wonderful. It's called The Hero of a Thousand Faces. And what Joseph Campbell says is that life itself is not about finding happiness per se, but of being on a journey. And on that journey, you find what's called responsibility. And in that responsibility, you find meaning and significance. It's not about finding some elusive type of pleasure. This is not life. This is childhood fantasy. You can't find happiness. Happiness has to find you. It's difficult to hear that because a lot of us are struggling. We want to find a good mate. We want to build a nice home. We want to clean our lawn. We want to find a good school for our kids. Why? Why are we doing this? To find happiness, per se? Well, all of human history tells us otherwise, because every single person who has ever lived is going to go through suffering at one point or another, and they will ultimately die. So then why bother with the whole show? This is what nihilistic philosophers call meaninglessness. And some actually say, go ahead and live, drink, eat, drink, and be merry. After all, there is no tomorrow. There's only today. That is a perspective, although it's a very childish perspective. It's a very hedonistic perspective and an animalistic one, because it doesn't bring you meaning. The key is to find meaning in the struggle, in the pain, in the journey. And in that journey, in that struggle, in that pain, one finds responsibility. And when one finds responsibility, one finds meaning. When one finds meaning, one does what one knows what is right before them. And at that point, you can eat your bread, drink your wine, and close your eyes in peace, saying, I did my best. And that brings you significance. And that is a form of happiness that you don't find, that finds you after you do what is responsible, what is true. This picture that you see here is called the hero's journey. The hero's journey is in every single epitaph, every major mythological story, whether you're talking about Thor or Hercules, or the stories of the Aztecs and the Indians. the stories in Islamic mythology or in Christian mythology or in Christian theology. It's the stories of the average person who moves off from the unknown plane to the known plane. Like the Luke Skywalker who encounters who he really is. He's a member of the Skywalker clan in the Star Wars mythology. He ends up growing and meeting figures like Yoda and Obi-Wan Kenobi. He falls through temptation. He suffers. He ends up losing too. In the same story of Bilbo Baggins in the Hobbit stories, or if you read Jane Austen, it's very similar. They have to go through a journey. If you read other stories in the superhero genres, such as the Avengers, anybody ever seen those recent movies? They've been very well done. If you read Homer's Iliad, the Odyssey, or the Matrix movies, there's always this theme of this character, this hero, that goes through this journey where he meets a helper, he finds the significance, he goes through a temptation, and he may actually fail. And matter of fact, the longer you live, the more you realize the first time you ride a bike, you will fall. You'll scrape your knee, you'll bleed. The first time you have a relationship, you may do it wrong. You may end up a broken relationship. The first time you raise a child is going to be difficult. The second, third time will be easier, of course. Everything is, this is life. It's difficult. But in that difficulty, one finds that sense of responsibility and does it anyway, because in that sense of responsibility, there's people waiting for you. There's children hoping on you. And there's employees that need you. And there's family that loves you. And in that meaning and significance, even in failing, and through failing, one actually gets better. So in the transformation period here in the story as you're watching it, the hero actually goes through an abyss of a death and a rebirth. What that is a period of time in our own lives where we have to suffer in order for us to get better. This hero's journey, as Joseph Campbell called it in the book, The Hero of a Thousand Faces, is actually the story of the Messiah, the hero that saves us all. It's actually a story of Jesus of Nazareth in Christian theology, where Jesus goes through this journey and he ends up dying and getting reborn and rebirthed or transformed in the resurrection. And that transformation is a symbol of life itself. It's winter, and from winter, everything dies, and from the death, spring comes forth with new life. You become better and stronger than you've ever been if you do not hold on to the bitterness and rage and pain that you held on before the temptation, before the destruction. I found in my life, in my readings, that people who are hurt end up hurting other people if they don't take the pain that they've gone through and allow God to transform it and remold them. They end up transmitting it to other people. Their bitterness and rage ends up writhing out of them like a shaken soda pop whenever it's popped open. At any time, they can snap because they haven't dealt with that pain, that misery. So the transformation, as Friedrich Nietzsche would say, that which doesn't kill you makes you stronger. That is true. However, there's another side to the story. That which doesn't kill you or hurt you, may make you cruel. It may make you worse than you've ever been. You will need to be able to address it. Otherwise, you'll never receive and achieve the level of transformation and atonement that the hero's journey allows us to go into. It's a fascinating one. Everyone has to go through it, but not everyone completes it. Not everyone gets to the end. That's just life. Blaise Pascal. Blaise Pascal was a Christian mathematical scientist. And he said the following: all men seek happiness. This is without exception whatever means they employ. They all tend to this end. The cause of some going to war and of others avoiding it. It is the same desire in both, attended with different views. The will never takes the least step but to this object. This is the motive of every man, even those who hang themselves. I find that fascinating. Even Aristotle, before him, argued this, and so did Aquinas and Augustine, that all men, all things seek a sense of happiness. And we cannot find it in our own ways. It has to find us. We can try to get it by eating enough ice cream. Eating too much ice cream is problematic. We can do it in a marriage, but even marriages do not ultimately bring significance. Because sooner or later you'll fight with that loved one. Sooner or later the prince who rides off in the sunset with his princess is going to get into an argument with her. Sooner or later she's going to realize that he has some warts, or that he realizes her breath actually smells at her when she wakes up. Hey, she's a human being. This is life. That which you thought would bring you the ultimate sense of happiness will ultimately disappoint you. So then why bother seeking it? Because the alternative is worse. The alternative is to go into the abyss of the self, and that is a type of hell. I'm going to get into here with, talk to you about Søren Kierkegaard and his work. Søren Kierkegaard wrote about the 3 stages of life. And in these 3 stages of life, I'm going to get into addressing exactly what these are and how they work through. He's going to be dealing specifically here with what you see is the concept of being boredom, anxiety, and despair. These type of situations arise themselves in anyone who deals with life long enough. Søren Kierkegaard dealt with it in a profound way in his wonderful works. He was a philosopher, a Danish philosopher, writing in the 19th century, called the Golden Age of Philosophy. He was a profound thinker and a very disturbed individual on a personal level. But Pascal found in his life, Søren Kierkegaard found in his life that to be truly, deeply spiritual and deeply individual, you need to deal with despair, you need to deal with the boredom and not ignore it and try to fill it with other things. Ultimately, all of life will lead you toward boredom, anxiety, and despair. They're the human psyche's major problems, and they're the ills of every man, woman, and child who lives long enough. The relief from boredom can only be fleeting. Passion or good play or a simulated situation with your friends or a great meal, all these things can alleviate it for a time. But sooner or later, they will come back. Either boredom, anxiety, or despair. How do we deal with these in the best way? So humanity has found different ways to deal with them. The first stage that Søren Kierkegaard talks about is called the aesthetic stage. Now, the aesthetic stage is a stage where a child is born into. The great thinker, Piaget, and other child psychologists will tell us that all of us go through what's called the oral or the anal stage, or the stage of the beginning, where we only see the world like a baby. And the only way to enumerate or to deal with the pain and the frustration of the world is to fill it with other things, such as my toys, my family, my friends. As you see the picture there of the little baby, he's a little angry. Because why is he angry? He's angry maybe because he hasn't been fed, or his diaper is a little full, or his mama stepped out of the room. Now, the problem is with this child is that if you give him a WMD, that would be a weapon of mass destruction, he would probably use it and wipe everyone out. Why? Because all the world is about him. That's how he thinks. And this is a childish, immature way of thinking. One of the differences between a mature individual and an immature one is a mature individual sees the world that it's not only about me. I am not the center of the universe. And as you begin to grow, you begin to try to fill your life with other things that satisfy you. And at this first stage, the aesthetic stage that Søren Kierkegaard talks about, it's a stage that says, I will try to fill it with sensory pleasures and experiences, such as more money, more sex, more relationships, more power, things that will bring me a sense of pleasure. And there's more of that. Wine, great food, time with friends. These are wonderful things. Some of them can be. Of course, too much of it can be problematic. But filling our life with these aesthetic pleasures is what brings life joy. It's a wonderful thing to be able to enjoy the first stage of life. Now, Søren Kierkegaard says the following about it. Spending time seducing others solely for the sake of the chase, such as a romance, enjoying the beauty of music and travel, and by the way, I love to travel too, with music, intellectual conversations and fine food, the refined aesthetic tastes, indulges in the fanatical hope of an endless journey from star to star. The first stage of life, whether you are a child or an adult, is constantly moving from one aesthetic high to the next. And it doesn't have to be sex, drugs, and rock and roll. It could be traveling to the next city, Paris, Rome, Italy, Barcelona, or moving from one lover to the next, or moving from one piece of music to the next, or one class to the next, or one weekend to the next. It's living that stage of constant bliss, but you never are ever able to fill your endless desire for happiness that way. It can't be filled. That's why you have to keep changing it or upgrading it. The second stage is a higher level. Kierkegaard tells us that the ethical stage is a stage where we end up joining a mosque or a church or an organization. We find ourselves connected to the FBI as a group. It's a great group to join into, great money you can make. Or join a police force, or become a professor or a teacher, or a lawyer, or an engineer, or a mother, or a father. And find meaning and significance in the stage where you are no longer looking at yourself, but you're looking altruistically to others. I'm no longer feeling, as the first stage does, a constant desire to fill my life with pleasure, pleasure, happiness, pleasure. What I'm looking for now is a sense of looking after others. And by looking after others, I join organizations that do that, such as the church or the FBI, or even joining a march such as Black Lives Matter, which is happening all over the country right now, social justice groups. I find my meaning by helping other people, not helping myself. It's a higher level. It's a wonderful level. It's how you find business. By the way, if you want to make some good money, find something that people really need. Create that, or work with somebody who has that, and then you will fill a niche. You will fill a need that people have. Then you can find money and a sense of security for your own family. But hopefully you're not doing it just to find satisfaction, because ultimately, as I mentioned in the first stage, it's not going to fill you. But finding that by helping others, such as creating a new iPhone or creating a new medical device or a new respiratory system that helps with COVID-19, those are ways of finding meaning in a social level, at the ethical level, by helping other people or dealing with racism in your communities or in your own life, etc. So these are ways that you can help others become better by dealing with problems on an individual level with a group of people. And that can be done by joining a group, or it can be done by joining an organization or a business. So the second stage is a great stage of growth. And it's a way of finding connection to the social group. Now here's a problem with the second stage. It's called groupthink. It's losing your sense of self, is what Søren Kierkegaard tells us. When I join a church, I'm no longer an individual. I'm part of a Christian community or a mosque, a Muslim community, or a Buddhist community. When I join the FBI or the police force, I'm no longer an individual. I'm part of a unit. When I join a social cause, I'm no longer an individual finding myself. I'm part of a group that does it. And when I deviate from that group, when I start to say things that are theologically or sociologically or politically incorrect, I'm ostracized by that group. I'm pushed aside. And when that happens, I feel back to the earlier portions I mentioned earlier. Anxiety, boredom, and rage, and a sense of aloneness. So to alleviate those, I go through the first stage again, but that doesn't satisfy me. I go back to the second stage, and that helps me find my connection with others. And when I'm connected with others, the danger is losing yourself. You lose your money, you can lose your spouse, you can lose your children, you can lose your house. But Søren Kierkegaard says there's a greater tragedy than all of these. It's losing yourself and not even knowing it. Because you never found who you are. And to find what I am and who I am, I can't just do it by being lost in a cloud of a group of people. That group may help me find my identity in a cultural sense or a religious sense, but it doesn't help me find my identity as a deep, significant sense of who I am. And what does that even mean, who I am? Søren Kierkegaard in his writing argues, You'll never know the answer to that question unless you go into what he called despair. And I recommend his book called The Sickness Unto Death, which is a profound book on the issue. That leads us now to the third stage, the spiritual stage. The spiritual stage, or the third stage, is a stage where people begin to realize that life is not just about me or about finding help in other people or finding significance by focusing on other people, but I have to look beyond me. Now, Søren Kierkegaard comes from the Christian tradition, and one of his strongest works is condemning the institutional church as he knew it. And he argues that in order for one to grow spiritually or psychologically or theologically, they have to do it in contrast, in contradistinction to the organized organization around them, not in connection to it. Because in his circles, people may actually go to a religious service like they did in the previous one, and find a sense of hope and meaning by helping other people, social justice, or even by helping themselves by reading the scriptures or going through mass or doing the 5 pillars or whatever it is that they're doing in their religious organizations. But they only do it because everyone else is doing it. And woe to me if I dare go against that clan. Now, I come from an Islamic culture in the Middle East, and woe to the individual Muslim if he stands up and says, I don't fully agree with the Quran. That's very dangerous to do because you're going against the social milieu of the day. And it's very dangerous to do. You can actually lose your life in some circles for doing that. But to find meaning in the third stage is to see beyond the group and to recognize the depth of despair that I go into. That I have to take what Christ talked about called take up my cross. Taking up the cross means taking up your responsibilities for the things you know you need to do. And Jesus said, follow him. But even cutting or looking at this as a psychological perspective, if I cut off everything in my life, everyone I know, and just think for myself, what is it that will bring me happiness? It has to be something beyond what I can actually grasp. It has to be something that actually grasps me. It's like love. I can choose to love my mother or my spouse or my children, but I cannot choose to fall in love. This is something that happens to you, not something that you do. It has to be something that is a recognition of my own inadequacies as an individual, of the smallness of who I am in contradistinction to the universe around me. The third stage of life is a stage for Kierkegaard that talks about a relationship with God that is exclusively personal. It's significantly independent of being part of a community or a church or an organization. Although that helps you grow, it doesn't make you grow. Because you can feel part of the passion in the songs and the readings and the wonder of being part of a group, but never ever be transformed within. And guys, I know people who are deeply religious and some of the worst jerks I've ever met in my life. They don't know how to be kind and loving to people around them because they've never been broken. They've never gone through a sense of despair to recognize that they themselves are not the bomb, that they're not God's gift to the world, that they need redemption as much as the broken man on the street who has no home, no job, no community, no degree. They're also just as much made in the image of God as that individual. So being religious doesn't make you or lead you to the third stage. It still keeps you to the second stage. We believe in gravity because Kierkegaard says, because we feel its constant effects upon us. It makes no sense to say we have faith in gravity, since that would require the possibility that someday gravity would fail to materialize. Faith requires an uncertainty, and thus we can have faith in God, according to Søren Kierkegaard, because God is beyond logic, beyond proof, and beyond reason, but he's not in contradistinction to them. He's not opposed to them, because studying enough reason, studying enough logic, studying enough evidence will actually lead you to recognizing that materialism, hedonism, narcissism, and the physical world itself is not enough. You need something beyond it to bring you meaning and hope. By the way, logically speaking, materialism or naturalism contradicts itself, because it says on a philosophical level that the only thing real in life is the physical. But that's not true, because thoughts are real and they're not physical. Justice is real, but that's not physical. Love is real, but it's not physical. Gravity is real, but let me say this clearly, it's not physical. Gravity is another level of energy, but it's a different type of energy. There are things in life that are not physical, that make the physical real, that make the physical allowed to exist, such as the laws of thermodynamics, the laws of nuclear energy, the weak and strong force in the centerpiece of the universe. These things are laws or stipulations or templates that make the physical real. They allow it to even exist. Materialism by itself is a self-contradictory position. So Søren Kierkegaard says you must look beyond the physical to find significance, because you yourself are more than the physical body that you inhabit. Faith requires that jump into the unknown. It's moving into the cave that you fear to enter, because inside that cave you'll find the treasure that you've sought for all your life. But it's dangerous, because we find that people who try to go there are afraid. And it makes sense. Going into the depth of the water and sinking into it is dangerous. But there is no other way to find meaning into, like first Søren Kierkegaard argues, you must despair of life. Then only then can you taste the beauty of it. Only then can you appreciate it. So finding happiness is not something that we do. Something that happens to us. By finding that life itself is not about pleasure, it's not about joining communities or doing social services, which are all wonderful things, by the way. But it's about finding who and the meaning for my purpose in my life, so I could be a better mother, a better father, a better employee, a better son. And by finding who I am in the transcendent, in that which I will have to face at the end of time, God, then and only then can I become better able to eat ice cream with joy, better able to raise a child, better able to climb a mountain, better in doing my homework and my work, because I'm connected to something greater than myself, because life is not about me. Life is about something much bigger, something much more grand. That's where religion comes in. And religion is profoundly interesting and fascinating. But it's also profoundly esoteric and problematic, because the spiritual leads people into the most absurd areas of the life. Richard Dawkins argued that God is like the cosmic spaghetti monster. There's no evidence for it. You may as well believe in the spaghetti monster for believing in God. People believe in Santa Claus. Why can't they believe in God too? Well, that's what you need. And what Søren Kierkegaard says, what you believe in God has to also be true. And that you have to test your own motives for why you believe it. Am I trying to get the spiritual to twist it and turn it like a cosmic jock machine, put my money into it and try to get things out of it, squeeze the cosmic lemon of God for happiness, joy, peace, pleasure, love, wine, and travel to my next destination? That's not what the spiritual is about. It's a lot deeper than satisfying my own pleasures. But it's also something I need to be careful of, because anybody and their mother, if they're smart enough and charismatic enough, can create their own religion and convince enough people and deceive enough people into following them. That's why it's so important to question your spiritual leaders, your books you read, the things you watch, and more importantly, your motives and why you do it. One of the most profound books I've read this year by Jordan Peterson is called 12 Rules of Life. He's got another great book called Maps of Meaning. In there, he says something interesting about finding happiness. He says that pick up the cross of your tragedy and your betrayal. Accept its terrible weight. Hoist it on your shoulders and struggle impossibly upward toward the kingdom of God on the hill. The alternative is death and hell. Pick up the cross of your tragedy and your betrayal. All of us, at one level or another, have gone through different levels of pain. And if you haven't yet, it's coming. Pick it up and deal with it like a man. Deal with it like a woman. Deal with it with somebody with a sense of responsibility. Deal with it with somebody who can actually take the pain and transform it like like a bird going into the proverbial fire of the phoenix. The wood that is in you, that's dead wood, will burn away into the fire in the crucible of pain and tragedy. The things that don't make you you, who shouldn't make you who the person you should be, will end up burning away in pain and tragedy and suffering. And when you come out of it, if you can allow yourself to give yourself over to the divine and to God, you can transform that over and give up your wondrous desire for revenge and give that person over to God. Let him go. Give him over to the police. Give him over to the FBI. Give him over to the lawyers to deal with. But at the deeper level, I need to accept responsibility for what I have done or what has been done to me. And pick that up and use it as a way to help other people. Whether I've been raped, whether I've been abused, whether I've been robbed, whether I've been betrayed, whether I've been at a loss, whether I got a diagnosis that's terrible, that's life. I need to deal with that in the best way I can. Not letting people get away with it. I'm not saying that. You give them over to the proper authorities and deal with it properly. But deep within, we need to let it go. One of my students came to me a number of years ago and told me she had can't forgive her father for what abuse he did to her when she was little. And I asked her, have you ever talked to him about it? She said she can't. He's dead. Well, she's the one who's suffering here. She's holding on deeply to a pain that should not have been done to her. But to hold on to it and make it part of her identity is destroying her potential to move from the third stage of happiness. We need to let that go. We need to pick up our responsibilities as a father, whatever that is, as a mother, as an employee, as a student, and do that to the best of my ability. And if I fall and if I fail, so be it. Let me fall. I'll come back up stronger and better from it. That is where you find significance and happiness. By dealing with responsibility, dealing with tragedy, dealing with suffering in a responsible way, then you find purpose. And when you find purpose, you can do what happened at the end of the Iliad and the Odyssey. You can lay your head down at night, knowing that you did your best, knowing that you did what you should do, and you sought the divine with all you have. You may fail, but at least you did your best. And that brings you hope. And hope is where you find happiness in that sense. Søren Kierkegaard wrote in his journal in 1835, I'm going to read portions of this with you. The way I have tried to show in the preceding pages is how these matters actually appeared to me. But when I try now to come to an understanding with myself about my life, things look different. Just as a child takes time to learn to distinguish itself from its objects, and quite a while so little distinguishes itself from its surroundings. That, like keeping the stress on the passive side, it says things like, me hit the horse, so too the same phenomena repeats itself at a higher spiritual stage. Therefore, I thought I might gain more peace of mind by making up new line of study, directing my energies towards some other goal. I might even manage for a while in that way to banish a certain restlessness, though no doubt it would have returned with greater effect, like a fever after a relief from a cold drink. So what Kierkegaard is saying here, as a child, I try to find a relief from my boredom, from the journey, but sooner or later it will return to me. So he continues to write. What I really need is to be clear about what I am to do, not what I must know, except in the way of knowledge and peace to precede all action. It is the question of my understanding of my destiny, of seeing what the deity really wants me to do. The thing is to find a truth which is true for me, to find the idea for which I am willing to live and die. And what is that thing that you need to find is the truth for yourself, is what Søren Kierkegaard is saying. I need to find something that is true that I'm willing to die for. Now keep me in mind here, guys. Beware of falling into the deception of relativism, of thinking whatever it is I think is true becomes true merely because I think it's true. It's like me thinking I have hair and a great, Elvis Presley hairstyle. I may believe it with all my heart, but it's just not true. No matter how much I believe it. I can believe I don't have a diagnosis of this particular type of cancer, but I still may have it in my blood. The reality is I need to come to terms with what is true and then connect myself with that. And I'll never know what that is unless I study and research it. And once I find out what actually is true in certain areas, at least to the best of my ability, then this is where Søren Kierkegaard's point comes in. I need to find a truth that is true for me that I'm willing to die for. And Martin Luther King said it the best. Those who do not find something worth living for will never find something worth dying for. So you need to find something that makes you or gives you hope. And you cannot find that by just going after pleasures of life or joining a community. You need to look beyond yourself to the divine. I close with a quote by Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl was a victim of the Holocaust. And he said the following: don't aim at success. The more you aim at it and make it a target, the more you're going to miss it. For success, like happiness, cannot be pursued. It must ensue. And it only does so at the unintended side effect of one's personal dedication to a cause greater than oneself, or as the byproduct of one's surrender to a person greater than oneself. Happiness must happen. And the same holds for success. You have to let it happen by not caring about it. I want you to listen to what your conscience commands you to do, and go and carry it out to the best of your knowledge. Then you will see that in the long run, I say, success will follow you precisely because you've forgotten to think about it. Thank you. At this point, I'll open up for discussion or questions that you may have about what I have presented regarding the 3 stages of life and why we cannot find happiness by pursuing it.
Professor, this is Livia Salazar. I was very impressed with your presentation. I don't specifically have any questions, but what you have presented today, I was able to cross-reference it to a book that I was reading about 2 semesters ago, The Sign of the Cross, and it goes through different stages. And when I got to second to the last chapter, it made a tremendous connection. I'm a very active Catholic, but all along, I didn't think I really understood that suffering is a part of life. And not unless you understand and embrace that suffering and utilize it to be a greater person, you'll continue to live in misery. And you have just completely connected your presentation today to this book. So thank you, truly.
Thank you for those insights. That sounds pretty helpful. That is helpful. Thank you so much, Livia.
I do have a comment. This is Krishanda. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
There's part of your presentation that I took as the human tie to responsibility, that being children, if you're a parent, employees, if you're a boss, whatever that human connection is, to responsibility is that link to happiness. So without that responsibility and that human connection to it, then there is no link to happiness. And that's kind of my small takeaway on the responsibility part of it. Once you're entering into the ethical stage. I just was wondering, or I guess, because that was one of the things I jotted down. So I was just wondering if there does not exist that human tie to a responsibility. If that doesn't exist, then does the link to happiness also not exist? Can we have responsibilities where there's no human tie to it and also find that connection to happiness?
I'm not sure if I follow the question that you're getting there. Are you saying, is it possible to be happy by following the human obligations that you have to your fellow man or your children or your community? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, so there's a human connection. So you, in the presentation, I guess you kind of, I would say you were alluding to that responsibility. Once you have that responsibility, then you can find some happiness in doing that, whatever it is that it is. But without that human connection, so you, as a parent, you would need a child, and that child representing that human tie. As a employer, you would need the employee, that employee being the human tie. Right. Without that, is there no link or no connection to happiness? Can there exist a responsibility where there is no human connection, there's no human tie, and that will lead to happiness?
Do you mind me interjecting? So let me ask this: what would you consider an example of something that you wouldn't have a human tie to have this happiness?
That's a good question. I would say maybe gardening. That's a responsibility that one can take up. You go and you tend to your garden, you tend to your flowers, you make sure that they are cared for, or your vegetables, whatever it is you're doing. There's no human connection other than oneself in that. So in that, is because the human aspect of it is removed, is there no link to happiness?
I like your question there. I think we are actually created to be in community. If you read the book of Genesis, the first chapter of Genesis, actually second chapter, God says to Adam, it is not good for man to be alone. So even a gardener, ultimately, to be a good gardener, he'll have to share the fruits of his labor, if I may say, to others around him. To find deep meaning and significance in your life, you can't do it in a garden alone. You need others around you. You need others to serve, others to help, others to bandage, others to love you. So you do need others around you to make you the person you need to be, so that you can encounter a deeper sense of who you are with the divine. Very good question.
I have a question.
Yes.
So actually it has 3 questions, but they all connect. So the first one, I don't know if I really understood the third stage, which is the spiritual. What it means is that the third stage means living your path as your religion morals are told and expected. Like if your religion is told that you need to do the 10 commandments, then you need to live in that pathway to get happiness. Is that what the third stage is?
That would be more the second stage, Ho. For example, following the 10 Commandments, which is in the Jewish tradition. Actually, Islamic and Christian tradition hold similar pathways as well in there. That would be more the second stage. The third stage is going beyond that and asking yourself the question, why am I following the 10 Commandments? Why am I doing it? Am I doing it so God can grant me a new car, a better husband, more healthy children, a healthy body, a nice house? Is that why I'm doing it? So I can get God on my side to serve me? Or am I doing it for a deeper reason, because I want to be right with God and find responsibility in everything else in my life, and find meaning and significance for that, and ultimately toward eternal life? So following the path of the 10 Commandments is more a second level than a third one, unless you're doing it for the reason that is beyond just impressing other people, or trying to get something out of God, or squeeze God like a lemon to get him to do something for me.
So if for example, I'm following the 10 Commandments not because I want to be seen as a better person, but like because I believe in the Bible and what God told me. If I respect all the 10 Commandments, I'm just how to say it, like a good girl for God seeing your child.
That'll do what? I'm sorry.
Like for example, if I'm doing the 10 Commandments not because to be seen for other people, but because I want to do it by myself to be a better Christian. Can that apply as a third stage, or still is the second stage?
That would be more the third stage, yes. But you need to ask yourself, why do I, quote, want to be a better Christian? Because in human way of seeing the world, we always compare ourselves to others. We always ask, are the clothes I'm wearing appropriate to the situation I'm going into? If I'm running for law, I have to compare myself to other lawyers or politicians. So it's always a comparison issue. So it's hard to divorce yourself from that when you get into religion. You end up comparing yourself to other people who are not following the 10 Commandments, right? So you have to question, why do I want to be a better Christian? What is the goal? What is the point? And this is where Søren Kierkegaard makes us question ourselves. Am I doing it just to please myself, or am I doing it to please God? And there is no distinct difference between the two. Ultimately, if you do follow the path of the right and the good and the true, ultimately, happiness does come to you. You can't grasp it, or heaven, that is.
Thank you.
So you had a couple other questions?
Yes. So also, does it need to be in the certain order, like the first stage, second stage, third stage, or can like for example, can we skip the first stage and go directly to the second stage?
This is something scholars have struggled with. It's not like a stair that you climb and you move from the first stage and jump to the second. Finally, you achieve it. I made it. Now I'm at the third stage. That's not human. What ends up happening is you end up fluctuating through different stages of life. You end up moving toward that which gratifies you and brings you a lot of pleasure or peace or happiness, and then moving into helping other people, and then finally finding a sense of peace and significance of who I am, and finding that contentment with myself, and finally with God, and that sense of peace where I'm finally ready to meet God. So it depends on the stage of life. For example, if I have a child and I'm playing with him on the playground, I will be filled with the first stage of joy with the little boy as he encounters a butterfly for the first time, or scrapes his knee and I'm trying to help him. I'm caught up in the first stage. As he begins to grow, I fluctuate throughout my day. I may go into the second stage and finally through the third stage. I think there's no one place, but what Kierkegaard is saying is beware of getting caught in the first stage, because that's a childish stage, an immature stage. Beware of being deceived by the second stage of constantly doing social services or helping other people, being part of an organization, because you can lose yourself in the second stage. Once you recognize who you are, that you are created in the image of God, and you're very special, and there's a purpose for you in your life, and you can find peace with God and peace with your own self, at the same time recognizing your own inadequacies and sins, you have that peace with God, and then you have achieved the third stage. But achieving the third stage doesn't make you inhuman. You still, if you're alive long enough, you'll fluctuate between the three stages.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
That's all.
That's all right. I have...
Professor, may I ask one final question?
Yes. Go for it.
In stage 3, Professor, you spoke about redemption. Can you go through that process again for me? You were talking about a few examples where a little girl was abused by her father, and you mentioned something about redemption. Can you help me connect that again?
Sure. When somebody's abused, like a situation with my student who was abused by her father, and she couldn't find any peace, she was very angry at him, legitimately so. The problem with it is that the man died, and she was holding that anger, that resentment, that bitterness and rage to the point where she went into emotional and spiritual psychosis. She wasn't able to progress in life. In order for her to release that and give him up to God, let God deal with him, let God punish him. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, is a concept in the Old Testament as well as in the New Testament. It's releasing to the divine those who have hurt you, so you don't have to hurt them yourselves. Forgiveness, if I may put it this way, is the fragrance a rose gives off after being stepped on. That forgiveness is the fragrance a rose gives off after being stepped on. That fragrance that you release is the releasing of your right. Let me say that clearly. Your right to hurt somebody back. You let it go. You give them up to the divine. That's the third stage. She gives up her right to hurt her father back, because she can't hurt him back. So first, secondarily, ultimately, only the divine can deal with him. And then she uses the fragrance to help other people who have suffered similar ways and find meaning by taking up the responsibility of helping other people who also suffered. And through that, she finds redemption for herself.
Beautiful.
Ultimate redemption, according to Søren Kierkegaard, comes through Christ and his vicarious suffering for us. And that is a symbol or an archetype of our individual sufferings.
Thank you, Professor.
Sure.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you.
Let's see here. Eldora wrote, it's good to question your religious leaders and sacred texts. Is it possible to not fully agree with something that is taught in your religion and still want to be part of it? Or does it make you want to lose yourself in the process? That's a very good question. It is very much possible to be Catholic and not agree with everything that comes out of the Vatican, or to be Baptist and not agree with everything that's being taught in your Baptist church, of course. Or to be Muslim and not agree with what's happening in Islam. Of course, it's very much possible. You're human. The problem comes in with not being able to raise your voice and express that in a safe place. If you're not in a place in your religion or you're in your community where you're able to be an individual under question, to raise concerns, then maybe you need to question whether you should be in there at all. Not necessarily to leave your faith, but maybe to leave the particular church that you're in or community, because they may not be open for change. And when they're not open for change, they're not open for growth. And when they're not open for growth, they're definitely not open to redemption. At that point, they live in the second stage, pretending like they're in the third stage.
So, concerning the comment you just made, what would you recommend, I guess, as bystanders to try to help someone in that sense that is struggling in the aspect that they are, because I'm all for everyone to have their own beliefs, you know, I'm accepting of everyone's beliefs, like you do you. However, though, like you said it earlier, you're like, you can be the most religious person and you can be the worst person ever. So like, what would you consider to be the best way to go about it to help someone? Kind of not necessarily like to convince them, because then at that point it sounds like someone has a personal agenda, but rather like help them see, I guess in a sense, what might be wrong with them.
Who's speaking, by the way?
It's Ben.
Ben. There may be something behind the question that I'm missing, so I may have to ask you to expand on exactly what you mean by it. But in generally speaking, if you find somebody who's hardened in their way like the proverbial mental rock, and they're unwilling to change, then the best thing you can do for them is not help them, because you're wasting your time. There's the old adage that says you have to shake the dust off your feet and walk away. Because there are some people who are unwilling, or they're not able at this particular stage in their journey to hit what's called rock bottom. And some people do not change when they see the light. They only change when they feel the heat. So you can shine as much philosophical, psychological, and religious light to them all you want. If they're not at the stage in their life where it's more painful to be where they are than where they could be, they won't change. That's the first thing I want to say. The second thing I want to say is there's the old concept of dropping a seed and waiting for it to sprout. It's doing the right thing for the right reason and trusting God for the result. So if there's somebody struggling and they're abusing their position or their family, or they're hurting other people, and I have to actually step in as a sense of responsibility and say something to them and let them know lovingly, at that point, I've done what I could, and I need to say it, whether they want to hear it or not, or report them if they are abusing their position or their power, because it's my responsibility to do it, and I am derelict of my duty if I stay silent. So I need to speak up and say something to them. And one of the best ways I found is if they're open to it, then I could sit down and have a deep conversation with them and express my position and do it in a way that's questioning them rather than condemning them. Because I'm not God and I'm not in the position of a prophet, but I am their friend, and because I love them, it's my responsibility to tell them, this is hurting you and it's hurting others. I need to tell you because I care. How they deal with it is up to them.
Okay, yeah, it's a really good insight.
Somebody just asked in the comment section, do you think there is so much hatred in our world because people have not reached stage 3? I think that's partially true, yes. The ancient scriptures call it sin, which is a divorce from the spiritual connection to the divine, to the God. To Christ and to the universal beauty. And one of the ways people deal with their hatred and their pain is by hurting other people. And they don't even realize they're doing it. That's the sad part. Or justifying it, which makes it worse. So yes, I think there's some truth to that. People have not reached stage 3. Many people who are religious live in stage 2 as well. So just because you look like you're religious or spiritual doesn't mean you are. Somebody asked, will this be recorded? Yes, it is actually being recorded now, so the FBI can listen to it. Not that they want to listen, they have better things to do. Somebody else asked, talk about violence, racism, corruption. Yes, of course. Definitely, those stem from staying in stage 2. All right, guys, we're getting at the 3:15 mark. If there's anybody else, last time, I'm going to close it up.
I have one question.
Yes.
So for Jay Campbell, from his perspective, so is he saying that happiness has to come, happen to you, or is he saying that responsibility itself is happiness?
Joseph Campbell says finding happiness is about going on a journey and recognizing part of the journey is falling and breaking and getting hurt and possibly dying. So finding happiness, according to Joseph Campbell, is going on the adventure of life, being the hero in your own story. And part of that is taking the responsibility before you, as what I'm doing is linking it to Søren Kierkegaard. And finding happiness is about doing what you are called by God to do with the best way you can, getting hurt in the process, but finding meaning and significance from it. And then you find happiness. Or happiness finds you, excuse me, to put it correctly.
Oh, okay, I understand now.
Okay. All right, guys. Thank you for being with me. It was a pleasure.